There are nights in sports that seem normal until for some reason they become charged with a tension that can't be explained with words. It's not a final, it's not an eternal classic, and yet the air feels heavier. That night, in a packed school gym, you could feel something like that. At first glance, it was just another high school game on the calendar. But the stands were full, the hallways crowded with people looking for a spot, and ESPN's cameras were ready to broadcast every second across the country. In a corner of the bleachers watching closely was Michael Jordan. For Jeffrey and Marcus, his sons, it wasn't just another game. Every time they stepped on a court, they carried the weight of a last name that had become legend. The crowd didn't just come to watch them play, they came searching for something of their father in them, and that expectation, invisible but constant, felt stronger than ever that night. Being Michael Jordan's son is like being born under a spotlight that never turns off. Doesn't matter if you're playing in a school gym that smells of freshly polished wood or in the United Center full of flashing lights, everyone expects you to be him, to fly, to win, to make the impossible look routine. That pressure was the daily reality for Jeffrey and Marcus Jordan. Both played at Loyola Academy, one of the most prestigious schools in Illinois. They weren't just filling space on the team. Jeffrey, the older brother, was a respected senior with good ball handling skills and leadership ability. Marcus, just a sophomore in his second year, was already ranked among the best in his class and played with a maturity rare for his age. Together, they formed a solid, complementary duo that knew how to win games. But the last name changed everything. Every good play was celebrated as an echo of Michael. Every mistake, on the other hand, felt like a ruthless comparison. His father would never have missed that, and the crowd often didn't even come to watch a high school game. They came looking for signs of the next Jordan to see if the legend had left behind heirs who could live up to him. And even though Loyola had been dominating every opponent with an undefeated streak of 20 straight wins and the title of best team in the state, it still felt like none of that was enough. There was an unspoken expectation that they had to be extraordinary, not just good. The Jordans were the center of everyone's attention. Every court they stepped on was more packed than the last. Every article talked about them and the last name that weighed a ton. And then in the middle of that perfect streak came the opportunity, or the test, that could define their season. A game televised by ESPN with the whole country watching against a rival who had a star of his own. A night that could solidify their name or remind them harshly how hard it was to live in the shadow of their father. While the Jordans carried the weight of a last name that seemed impossible to live up to, on the other side of the court was a kid who seemed to thrive off that very same echo. Eric Gordon, a 17-year-old shooting guard from Indiana, was already a star in high school basketball. He stood 6 feet 5 inches, had a smooth shot, and a level of physical explosiveness that made him look different from the rest, like he was playing in another league. And there was one detail no one could ignore: he wore jersey number 23. His nickname, Air Gordon, was no coincidence. It was a direct nod to Michael Jordan, both for his athletic ability and the number on his back. And the best or worst part was that the nickname had already caught on before the game, fueling the curiosity around seeing them face to face. In high school, Gordon was untouchable, Indiana's Mr. Basketball, an All-American selection, and capable of dropping 50-point games with chilling ease. In his senior year, he averaged 30 points a night while shooting between 46 to 50% from three, and most impressively, he was ranked the second best player in the entire United States for the class of 2007, behind only Kevin Love and ahead of future NBA players like Chandler Parsons, number 44, DeAndre Jordan, number 25, James Harden, number 21, Blake Griffin, number 18, Derrick Rose, number 5, and OJ Mayo, number 3. That's why the game wasn't just Loyola Academy, Illinois' undefeated team versus North Central from Indiana. It was the kid being compared to Michael Jordan going up against Michael Jordan's sons. With ESPN broadcasting live to the entire country and MJ himself sitting in the stands, every pass, every shot, every move would be scrutinized. The gym was thick with that kind of tension that signals something big is about to happen. The atmosphere before the game was so electric you could cut it with a knife. It wasn't common for a high school game to be nationally televised on ESPN. But this wasn't just any game. The network had promoted it as one of the most anticipated matchups of the season, something that rarely happens in high school basketball. Loyola Academy came in with a perfect record, 20 straight wins and the label of best team in the state of Illinois. Their fans were used to seeing them demolish opponents, winning by 20 or 30 points like it was nothing. But this time, the stage was different. The hype wasn't just about the undefeated streak. It was about the drama of facing the kid nicknamed Air Gordon, the rising star many saw as Michael Jordan's heir, going up against Michael Jordan's own sons. The gym was overflowing, not a single seat was left, and the hallways were packed with people trying to find any gap to catch a glimpse of the game. There were reporters, cameras, fans, and onlookers eager to witness a showdown this rare in the high school world. Jeffrey and Marcus came in confident, their duo was clicking, the team was peaking, and every analyst had them marked as the favorites. Jeffrey, a senior and the team's natural leader, was in charge charge of setting the tempo. Marcus, a sophomore, was already showing strong character and a game mature beyond his years. Both understood what was at stake, not just the undefeated record, but the chance to show the country they could carry the weight of their last name. On North Central's side, the situation was different. Everyone knew the spotlight was on Eric Gordon, the team's undisputed star. His presence alone filled the gym with tension. There was a buzz of expectation every time he warmed up or took a shot. He was the kid being compared to MJ, facing off against MJ's sons, with Michael himself sitting in the stands, watching every moment closely. The game hadn't even started, but it already felt like more than just a high school matchup. The ball was about to go up, and everyone knew this night would be etched somewhere in history. The ball finally went up, and the entire gym erupted. There were nerves, camera flashes, and an energy that was hard to describe. Loyola Academy, with Jeffrey and Marcus Jordan as its cornerstones, came out determined to prove their undefeated streak was no accident. The opening minutes were textbook team basketball, intense defense, ball movement, and quick attacks that ended in easy points. Jeffrey, the older brother, naturally stepped into the role of leader. He organized the offense, talked to his teammates, and set the tempo of the game. Marcus, barely in his sophomore year, didn't shy away. He attacked the rim, pressured on defense, and played with the fearless attitude of someone determined to make his mark on a special night. The most celebrated moment of the opening stretch came when Marcus lifted his head, saw his older brother cutting to the rim, and threw a perfect alley-oop. Jeffrey soared, caught the pass midair, and finished with a clean, powerful dunk. The gym went wild. ESPN's commentators replayed it over and over, and in the stands, Michael Jordan allowed himself a proud smile. For a moment, it looked like everything was going to go right. Loyola was up 15-7 just 5 minutes into the game. Every possession felt like a chance to extend the lead, and every defensive stop was a blow to North Central's spirit. The undefeated run, the Jordans' chemistry, and the energy of the home crowd made it feel like this might be just another chapter in their perfect streak. But what no one imagined was that this strong start was just the prelude to a brutal twist. On the other side, Eric Gordon was watching every move, biding his time, waiting for the exact moment to unleash the storm, and when he did, the game changed forever. Loyola's early dominance had been so clear that it seemed like the game would be just another chapter in their perfect streak, but the threat had already started to take shape. In the first quarter, Eric Gordon scored 18 of North Central's 20 points all by himself, more than the rest of his team combined. Loyola was still ahead on the scoreboard, but that individual performance was already a sign that something was shifting beneath the surface. And in the second quarter, Gordon completely transformed. He entered a state that felt unreal. Every possession became an unsolvable problem. If you gave him space, he pulled up from three with the confidence of an NBA veteran, and the shot went in clean. If you pressured him, he exploded with his first step and got to the rim like a freight train, absorbing contact and still finishing the play. The Jordans took turns trying to guard him, but it didn't matter. It was as if he already knew exactly how to counter every defense. In a matter of minutes, North Central erased the lead Loyola had built. The gym turned into a boiling cauldron. Chants of Air Gordon echoed from the stands, and ESPN's cameras captured every point, every expression, every defiant look. The second quarter ended with a crushing partial 25-5 in favor of North Central. Loyola, who had started with such confidence and energy, now looked shaken, unable to stop the onslaught. Jeffrey and Marcus Jordan exchanged frustrated glances, trying to reorganize the team, but Gordon was in a trance. He looked unstoppable. In the stands, Michael Jordan watched silently. No more smiles, no nods of approval, just that cold, focused stare so many opponents had seen during his NBA career, but this time aimed at a teenager dismantling his son's team live on national television. And the most striking part, there was still a lot of game left to play. The second quarter had been a warning, but the third was a full-on execution in broad daylight live on ESPN. Eric Gordon wasn't just inspired anymore, he was unleashed, playing as if every possession were a highlight for his personal documentary. Loyola tried everything. Jeffrey and Marcus took turns guarding him, chased him all the way to the locker room if needed, but it made no difference. Gordon always found the gap. If they pressured him on the perimeter, he blew past them with an explosive change of pace. If they sacked into the paint, he rose up with insulting ease and sank the shot cleanly, nothing but net. By the time the third quarter ended, the individual stat line was a cruel joke. Gordon already had 39 points and more than Loyola's entire team combined. What stood out most was how the crowd, which at the start had been buzzing for the Jordans, began to surrender to the obvious. Every three-pointer, every drive, every dunk triggered a roar that was no longer for preserving the undefeated streak, but for the show the Indiana kid was putting on. The feeling on the court was one of absolute helplessness. Loyola looked like they were chasing someone playing in another dimension. Defensive switches didn't work, strategic adjustments melted away in seconds, and the clock became just another enemy. In the stands, Michael Jordan remained serious, motionless, watching as a teenager wasn't just tearing apart his son's undefeated record, but the entire storyline everyone had imagined for that night, and the worst part, there was still a whole quarter left to play. The fourth quarter was no longer a fight, it was a one-sided exhibition. North Central played with the confidence of a team that knew the night belonged to them, while Loyola seemed resigned to simply trying to keep the wound from getting any deeper. But Gordon had no intention of easing up. He kept attacking as if the score were tied, as if he still had something left to prove. The ending was as symbolic as it was brutal. With the game already decided, Gordon got the ball, drove to the basket, and, with no real opposition, rose up for a dunk that felt tailor-made for the camera. And for the most famous spectator in the gym, Michael Jordan, arms crossed and face serious, didn't break his composure, but there was something in that moment that felt like a challenge. The kid they called Air Gordon soaring in front of Air Jordan. The final score was a historic blowout. North Central 91, Loyola Academy 50. A 41-point difference, Loyola's worst defeat in over a decade. Gordon finished with 43 points on his own, nearly matching the entire opposing team's output. In the stands, MJ kept his gaze fixed, as if deep down he was ready to suit up, grab the ball, and stop the storm himself. But it was too late. That night, the story had been written by someone else. Loyola Academy's fall wasn't just a loss, it was a national spectacle. North Central steamrolled them with a 41-point difference, the largest defeat the program had suffered in over a decade, and did so in one of the most watched high school games in ESPN history. That night, the court felt more like a television set than a school gym. The broadcast didn't just report the result, it turned it into an event. ESPN created a special graphic showing the gaping score difference and displayed it multiple times during the game and in the final recap, making sure that image was seared into the minds of millions. Every time it appeared, the message was clear. This wasn't just a win, it was a historic beatdown. The TV script wrote itself. Eric Gordon executed with surgical precision, Loyola searched for answers they couldn't find, and in the stands, Michael Jordan watched everything without intervening. The cameras knew exactly where to aim, and the sports highlights confirmed it. That night was premium content. The plays, the reactions, the contrasts, everything was replayed over and over, amplifying the humiliation. For Loyola, it was a stain hard to erase. For the public, a spectacle that solidified the nickname Air Gordon as something more than just high school marketing. And for the Jordans, it was proof that there is no such thing as a small stage when your last name is the most famous in basketball history. At Loyola, that game wasn't easily forgotten. It wasn't just about losing an undefeated streak, it was the confirmation that even teams that seem ironclad can break. In the hallways, during practices, even in the most trivial classroom conversations, the same image always lingered, the Jordans being outplayed, and not by a little. That feeling of vulnerability, that their armor had cracks, stuck with the team. For Jeffrey, the blow was double. It was his senior year, and he wouldn't get a real rematch against Gordon. That defeat froze as one of the sharpest and bitterest memories of his time at Loyola. Marcus, younger, still had room to write new chapters, but every time a big game approached, the murmur returned. Can they redeem themselves from what happened with Air Gordon? The ghost of that night was always there, lurking, ready to appear at the slightest stumble. Meanwhile, Gordon didn't lose momentum. That performance cemented him as the best shooting guard in the country and cleared any doubts about his potential. A year later, he was already shining at Indiana University, with games confirming that his success hadn't been a lucky break. In 2008, he was selected 7th overall in the NBA draft, beginning a career that would see him become a feared scorer, win the 6th Man of the Year award, and sustain himself in the league for more than a decade. That particular night was more than a game. For some, it marked the start of a wound that would take time to heal. For him, it was the open door to a future that seemed written in indelible ink. The same stage, two opposite paths, and a silent lesson about how one single night can change everything. What came next was almost a déjà vu, but on a much bigger stage. That same year, the Jordan Brand Classic was held, Michael Jordan's flagship event that brought together the best high school talents from across the United States. It wasn't just any game, it was played in a packed stadium, broadcast nationally, and had become a showcase that launched entire careers. Most of the players who passed through there ended up at top universities and eventually in the NBA. Eric Gordon, of course, was invited. Interestingly, according to him, he barely knew about the event until he was nominated shortly before it took place. For Jeffrey Jordan, the story was different. His name was on the list, and while he had good skills in more than one hallway, it was whispered that his last name carried more weight than his resume. The matchup was set. The kid who had already ruined a night for the Jordans was now appearing in Michael's own house, with him watching from the front row. From the opening tip, Gordon made it clear he wouldn't go unnoticed. He played with the same confidence that had made him famous in Indiana, driving powerfully to the hoop, finishing through contact, and whenever he got space, punishing with clean three-pointers. He set the pace for his team, carried entire offenses on his shoulders, and found his teammates at key moments. Not only was he the top scorer for his side, but he did so with surgical precision, as if every play was designed to reaffirm that this place belonged to him. The broadcast didn't miss a detail, replaying his best moves, focusing on his face after every basket, and occasionally showing MJ in the stands, serious, watching every move. It was impossible to read the scene as just another exhibition game. It was a new chapter in the silent rivalry that Gordon hadn't asked for, but was clearly enjoying to the fullest. For him, it was another night confirming that he was no longer just a promise, but one of the most dominant shooting guards in the country. For Michael, it must have been uncomfortable to see that at the event bearing his name, the kid who had humiliated his sons was once again stealing the show. What for any father would be an undeniable pride for Michael Jordan was an emotional minefield. Jeffrey and Marcus weren't just playing basketball, they were playing with their last name stamped on them like a label impossible to ignore. Every pass, every shot, every mistake was scrutinized under the lens of how close are they to being like their old man. And that is a standard that even for the best borders on the unattainable. On that night against North Central, sitting in the stands, MJ was no longer the man who had changed the course of playoff games with a single play. The control wasn't there, nor was the option to call for the ball and decide the outcome. All that was left was to watch. And what he saw was Eric Gordon, dubbed by the crowd as Air Gordon, dismantling his sons play after play, in a show broadcast live on ESPN to the entire country. Jordan's face said it all, a mix of restrained frustration and the helplessness of a competitor who doesn't know what it's like to be a spectator. The Jordan Brand Classic took that feeling to an even more uncomfortable level. It was his event, his creation, the runway for talents he had designed to celebrate the best of high school basketball. And there was Gordon, again, stealing the show. It didn't matter that Jeffrey was on the roster, nor that the Jordan brand was stamped all over the stadium. The lights, the flashes, and the media commentary all pointed to the same place. The kid who months before had humiliated Loyola, now repeating his starring role in front of MJ himself. There was the paradox Jordan knew better than anyone. He had built a myth that defined a whole generation, but that same myth was becoming a suffocating shadow for his sons. It was a dilemma without a manual, a battle played not on the court, but in the silence of glances. How to support without interfering, how to encourage without letting the bar he himself set become a sentence. That year, Michael had to learn that even the greatest can feel out of the game. The story of that season isn't told just with stats, it lives in what lingered afterward. Michael Jordan watched his sons go through something he never had to, carrying a last name so heavy that every loss felt amplified as if the echo could never be silenced, and he did it from a place unfamiliar to him, the stands. Powerless to intervene, unable to change the script. Eric Gordon, on the other hand, moved forward with the momentum of someone who knows he's destined to go far. That night and the Jordan Brand Classic were stepping stones that propelled him toward Indiana University, the NBA draft, and a long, respected professional career. For him, those games were pure fuel. For the Jordans, they remained a wound that time barely managed to conceal, and maybe that's why when you think about that final image, Michael sitting, watching another kid own the night, the question still hangs in the air, unanswered. Was it pride, seeing his sons try to shine on the biggest stage they'd ever had, or was it helplessness? The realization that no matter how much he wanted to, he couldn't step onto the court and play for them. The only certainty is that night, even the greatest player of all time learned there are battles he cannot win, and for someone like Michael Jordan, that must have hurt more than any loss. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. This was Hoop Secrets, and I'll see you next time.